We're looking at just under 500,000 federal sealed indictments.
How do we know there's 500,000 indictments? How do we know there's any sealed indictments?
Going back to as early as 2018, Q started speaking about sealed indictments, and you can see that highlighted here in the middle. Pacer.gov. What is Pacer.gov? Pacer.gov is the official database, if you will, of all federal indictments, sealed and unsealed. I said, well, I want to check this out myself. Now, you have to register for a Pacer account. You have to either be a legal professional or a researcher. So I don't know if the process is still the same now, but at the time you had to send out for a password and they mail it to you. And I did that back in 2020.
Does that mean we're taking the whole damn house down?
It does. I mean, this is one of those things. I know that you spoke to Mike about the secret army of 60,000 a while ago, that Newsweek article. We've all been through that. That's one of those things that kind of puts rubber to the road, but
So these indictments are legit.
they're legit. And what happened next is you can see on here on the right side, these people were asking Q. They said, well, if I have an idea for Pacer account holders, why don't we start doing random searches using unsealing order? And that's right here on the right side. I'm highlighting it right there. And Q answered 100% authentic, telling them like, look, this is where you're going to look. You're right. You're on the right track here. And if you look down at the very bottom here, it shows a link to backup files. And then it also says how many are normal. And so what these anons did is they went back and they said, at any given time, they looked in 2006, 2009, random years, and they found usually a few thousand. In this case, 1,077. I've seen numbers as high as 2,800, 3,000, 4,000. Sealed indictments are usually done in RICO cases or larger cases where there's a reason that they have to keep the information hidden from the public. So here's where it gets very interesting. This is August 19th, 2018. I'm looking at the far left column here. And right here, it talks about in section 12 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And it talks about an amendment that they made that the Secretary of Defense, in consultation with Homeland Security, will issue non-binding guidance regarding factors that commanders, convening authorities, staff judge advocates, and judge advocates should take into account when exercising their duties with respect to the disposition of charges and specifications in the interest of justice and discipline under Articles 30 and 34 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. These are the sections, that speak about tribunals.
Wow. So that's the whole purpose for these 4 years is let them commit more crimes. Let the indictments build up so that we can go after these criminals and take them out. And they go to military tribunals. It's a fast process. It's done swiftly. No horse shit, no bullshit. They're in, they're out. They're either put to death or put in jail. This is unbelievable.
This is running concurrent with all that heavy airplane traffic going in and out of Gitmo, which again can be tracked through public sources. So, everything I talk about and Dave talks about, and we're so aligned with our methodology in finding stuff. It's always sourced, okay? But there are websites where you could find the traffic going in and out of Gitmo, like it's Chicago's O'Hare Airport, and these are military planes, and this is running concurrent with this. So again, everything matches up perfectly.
My buddy Sean Ryan went to the State of the Union. He said, dude, everyone's here. Pelosi, all of them. They're all here. I saw them. I shook some of their hands. He was at the State of the Union. He said every politician was there to be accounted for. What do you have to say about that?
Biden's in a mask. There's no doubt about that one. Kamala.
Well, Biden's very suspect, 100%. But I mean,
just from logical inference, though, if you can get a masked man in the White House, everything else becomes possible. So at that point, you have to get over the incredulity fallacy.
Back up real quick for 1 second, just on the State of the Union thing, because I do tend to agree with what Mike's saying, but I understand that for a lot of the audience, it's a stretch to accept the fact that there's all these people in masks. Zoom in as Biden walks in, and what you'll notice around a lot of these people, Pelosi being one, quite a number of the big names, look very closely at the people surrounding them. You will find U.S. Marshals. You can look right at their
You
lapel
know
pin.
what? I've seen it. Yes.
So what do
yeah.
U.S. Marshals do? They guard prisoners. And if you remember, Mike, you know this. I mean, Q also said it in a number of posts that deals had to be cut to
Yeah.
get this done. So, you know, do I think that there's 500,000 people that are going to get executed and go to prison? No, of course not. I think a lot of these people were indicted, were brought in saying, look, this is what we got on you. And maybe these are people that didn't necessarily commit crimes against humanity. They may have just gotten caught up in maybe some of the money aspects of it, or taking bribes, or maybe, you know, their family was threatened and they were just forced to do things like pass certain bills or whatever. And they leveraged that against them. The second piece of this paragraph that I've highlighted, if you continue reading it, it says that guidance will take into account, with appropriate consideration of military requirements, the principles contained in official guidance of the Attorney General to attorneys for the federal government with respect to the disposition of federal criminal cases in accordance with the principle of fair and even-handed administration of federal criminal law. So if you read that paragraph a couple of times, what it's basically telling you is we updated the Uniform Code of Military Justice to connect it to federal indictments,
Wow.
to the Attorney General. So, because my question at first was, well, wait a second, if we're under military occupation and these are civilian criminal indictments, how can that work? How can the military do tribunal through DOJ or state level indictments? Well, there's your answer right there in that
Wow.
paragraph. They
Great
amended
find.
the UCMJ, 495,114 sealed indictments.
Jeez.
And you can see on line 7259 right there, where it says Western District of Wisconsin, that they last updated this on 4/27/24.
They're getting them all.
That's right. That's right. And I think, you know, again, now how many of these, this is what the public can see, right? This is all, you know, linked to public data, pacer.gov, just as referenced in the Q boards. The logical question is, well, you know, a lot of people, I've had people ask me, well, you know, that means there's a lot left to be done. You know, I remind everybody that if you follow Q, it tells you that 20% is public, 80% is covert. So, you know, I think this goes along the lines of, do I believe that just because they haven't been unsealed, they haven't been executed? No, I think going back to what we were talking about before, much of this has already been executed. And depending on what they did, I think depending on the person, they were either taken away permanently or brought in, read the riot act and said, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're not going to do. You're going to play a role. Remember, you know, think of all the CEO, over 4,000 CEO resignations
Yes.
since 2018.
You're right. They stepped down.
Right. So you walk in, you show them a federal indictment, and you say, here's what you're going to do. On this date, you're going to step down. I also didn't put it past them. You know, you say to yourself, why did Bud Light do what they did? What idiot would do that, would allow that campaign to go out, knowing that it's going to tank your stock? Well, somebody that was under a federal indictment that was told to do it. You know, that's just my theory on that.
Okay.
But CEO resignations are real.
There was a story just the other day. Bill Gates just liquidated another $1.7 billion in assets. So that's what's happening with these characters. They are being forced to liquidate. The money's being taken, and it's being used to fund operations such as this.
You
it
know,
was used, in my opinion, to purchase Twitter.
You know,
if you
yeah,
go to
I
the
agree.
Q
I
drops,
agree with you on that. 100%.
Q on 20-something different occasions issued unmistakable direct threats to @Jack, which is Jack Dorsey. It said, we're coming for you and we're going to take Twitter. And they used the money of Elon Musk to do it.
I think Elon Musk was pulled aside and told to cooperate as well.
And he's he's the perfect character to do it, you know, because he was a champion of the left, right? He's a champion of the university class, the elites.
Yeah.
And all he's been doing with his 160 million X followers for the last 2 years is red pilling. You know, and you have to say to yourself, if the bad guys were truly in control, and all your audience is obviously very dialed into all this stuff, you know how the structure works, this would never be allowed to happen. Nobody that would have these kind of intentions to undo the lockdown of Twitter, allow virtually anything to go back out there now, and then be a champion red pillar, that would never be allowed to happen
Yeah.
if
No.
the top echelon of this cabal was still in control. You simply cannot let somebody who's going to red pill the world get control of really, which arguably the most influential platform on earth. You can't do it. It would just never happen. So when you
1000%.
yeah, when you start to connect these sealed indictments to what Mike King found, you know, that article, the Newsweek article with the secret army of 60,000, the one that talks about masks and talks about how they're embedded into corporations and universities and everything else.
Yeah.
You can start to connect the dots. And when people are saying you're watching a movie, you can start to connect the dots as to how they're doing it, right? They have operators in some cases, and in other cases, going back to the sealed indictments, they simply took people in, you know, RICO style, and took them into a dark room and said, here's what you're going to do. You can either do it, or we're going to take everything you own and send you down to Guantanamo. And when you really piece that together, the secret army of 60,000 and these sealed indictments, along with all the chaos and insanity we've seen, it really does start to paint the picture.
This makes the most
back
sense
up what
to
we're
me.
saying.
And I remember when BLM and Antifa were really taking hold of the country and burning and looting, and it was out of control. Dude, where are they now? Where
That's
are
right.
they now? And then even though millions of immigrants are coming through, we should have way more problems than we do right now. I believe there is a secret army, and I agree with Mike on this. What, 60,000? I think it's bigger than that now, probably.
Yeah.
But I
Agreed.
believe there are covert operations happening within this movement that we don't know about. They're taking people out. They're sending people back. They're taking out the orchestrators. They're probably taking out the people that are engineering this whole thing.
The military usually in these operations, every PSYOP they run, there's usually 2 or 3 reasons for it. And we got to remember the secondary piece of this is, how do you catch all the NGOs that were going to be laundering money for housing and for these debit cards and all these different things? How do you catch the local police that might have been involved, the mayors, the city council, all these people that were planning to flood these cities with migrants for their voter base? And so, again, going back to what we said before, you can't just arrest them because they had the idea. You have to let these people in, the busing companies, all these different people that were involved in what amounts to treason against the United States. You have to let them complete the crime. And I know that's difficult for a lot of people to accept, but we are at war.
You cannot in America. You still kind of have to go by the letter of law in some form. You cannot just arrest people because they might do something.
Right.
You got to let them do it.
You know, they knew the military was onto them in the NSA, and that there was some form of irregular warfare coming. But I don't think they could foresee this stuff we're talking about, because it's so vast, it's so brilliant, as clever and as cunning as these deep staters were. They could never appreciate the magnitude of this thing. And yeah, Trump is brilliant the way he pulled it off, but behind him, this whole apparatus of the military operation, you know, he's he's more than the front man, he's the quarterback, but still, he could not exist without this vast thing that God knows how long.
Well, it's like David Copperfield
in the making.
David Copperfield has a huge team behind him doing all the technical stuff, making the illusions happen. Trump is David Copperfield.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure when he agreed to take this job on, he analyzed, okay, what do you got? What is your plan? How are you actually going to execute something like this? And he saw it and said, holy shit, you guys are genius. Yeah, I'll take the job.
Nobody goes against the DOJ, the justice system, and just says, this judge crooked. Yeah, he's a piece of shit. Nobody does that in their right mind, man. But people are watching this going, Trump's crazy. I'm like, no, he's not. He's showing you. He's making it obvious so that the people see this. So they see the 2-tier system.
You got Judge Engeron taking half-naked selfies of himself. Like, you're telling me the deep state, with all their money and power, they can't go and scrub the records of these people or tell them not to post naked selfies. Like, you know, and then go now.
It's like they're all on trial. They're all on trial.
And I thought you got your full confirmation the other day. Michael Cohen gets on the stand for the prosecution. And when he's being cross-examined, he's asked, so you stole money from the Trump organization? He said, yeah. He admitted to 3 felonies. Now, Nino, you tell me, what attorney that is good enough to be an attorney for the billionaire class wouldn't know to plead the 5th on the stand? Does that make any sense to anybody?
None.
If there is like some kind of black hat move, to me, it'll be white hats playing black hats doing it.
Fair enough.
But it's tough to call. I don't have the script. And frankly, how do we even know that the plan is static? They might have alternative avenues they can like
Yeah.
reassess. It's like football team has a plan, but all of a sudden they're not able to run the ball. It's like, okay, let's pass.
Once you have another election, then it completely takes the wind out of the sails of showing people what happened in 2020.
Right.
Right.
And you
That
cannot
seminal
roll everything.
moment.
You can't roll everything back.
Yeah, once we move on to the next one, it's like going
Good
back
point.
now. And if you went back now and said that, by the way, Nixon rigged the election in 1972, no one would care, right? It doesn't have any
Right, yeah,
impact. But
yeah.
while the guy's still in office, to me, I don't see how they get around that moment of impact that will be recorded in history for hundreds of years. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
literally the biggest moment in American history because we know the numbers, right? Most people who think the election was rigged, they think, oh, they shifted a couple 100,000 votes. No, 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 no. It's tens of millions.
Yeah.
So I don't see how they get around that shock moment where they show, the
That Trump
normies that
really won like 49 states.
exactly. And I think you need to have some kind of intervention where the military steps in,
Yeah.
presents the evidence, there's a provincial government for whatever period of time, and then we run a special election. But we don't know. But there's the thing that keeps me going, week in and week out, and the thing that I preach to my audience is as long as we're seeing this type of evidence and these many anomalies, they're giving you hat tips and nods all over the place that they got this, that there is a plan in place, and we just have to hang in and stay along for the ride. But there's nothing normal about what's happening right now. Nothing, and there's just too many things happening. The Trump trials alone, that you have to stop and say to yourself. I remind people all the time: ask yourself this question: would this happen if the bad guys were in control as they have been for 200 years?